Hey y'all, what's up? My name is Kelsey K, otherwise known as Kelsey K MUA, and I wanted to thank you so much for being here today. Well guys, today's video unfortunately is not really a happy one. I wanted to kind of have a serious talk with you guys about what my experience was like and my grieving process when losing my dad. So 2 years ago today, my father passed away from a serious cardiac accident. He was lighting off fireworks and he just collapsed. We called 911, EMS got there. They were apparently able to get his heart restarted in the ambulance. They took him to the hospital and they were able to get his heart started again. However, they were not able to keep it going and he passed away. That was probably the worst day of my life. Oh gosh. It was a nightmare. And for a while I felt like I was living the same nightmare day in and day out. I need to keep it together. Okay. It was just a straight up nightmare. I felt like I was living the same day over and over again for what seemed like forever. I still remember it to this day, what it felt like going into the hospital room, the nurses and doctors, taking us into the room to see him. And, I had this, vision in the back of my mind thinking that maybe I could, hold his hand or something and his heart would start again and, he'd still be there. But, when you see someone, when they're gone, it's the scariest thing because there's no more color left in their face. Oh, I'm sorry. And it was a day that I wish to never want to relive. But so the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I didn't necessarily go through all of these stages. Not everybody does go through all of these stages, nor does anybody grieving go through these 5 stages in the same order. Everybody kind of grieves differently. I grieved in a very bizarre way from what I thought that I would. I didn't eat for almost 3 days. My husband and my mom and my uncles and everybody, my family, they had to force me to eat. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I think the first day I hadn't slept for almost 50 hours. And it just felt like a blur. I felt so heartbroken. I had a literal hole in my chest. When people tell me, they're like, oh, I was so heartbroken, I'm like, do you really know what it feels like to have a hole punched in your chest? And have a feeling like there's a void that this impending feeling of doom, like that nothing is ever going to replace that hole in your heart. Because if you've never felt that, then you don't know what heartbreak is. I always felt so empty, like I was wandering around, like I was some sort of ghost kind of just floating around everywhere. No matter where I went, I didn't really feel like myself. I just felt so empty. I felt like I was just this empty being walking around on the earth. When I returned to work a month later, and honestly I probably could have been gone longer, but I had friends and family that were advising me to hey, you should go back to work. You just kind of need to get back into a routine. You need to start doing something. You need to distract yourself. You can't just stay at home all day and pretend like it didn't happen. And I wasn't pretending that it didn't happen because I knew that it happened, but I just had no energy to do anything. But they were right. I really did need to get back to work. The funny thing is that when I went back to work, obviously working in sales, before my dad had passed, I was actually thinking about maybe taking a vacation because I was just getting really stressed out with being on the selling floor and my numbers were really bad. But when I came back, my numbers were really good. All of my supervisors, all my bosses, they were like, wow, your numbers are really good. What have you been doing different? And I'm just like, I'm empty. I don't want to talk to people. I guess before I was kind of just talking people's ears off, and now I just didn't want to talk to them at all, and so I guess that made people like me better and want to buy stuff from me. I don't know. But bottom line was just I kind of just didn't want to be there. I didn't really care about anything or anyone. You know, I would have, you know, customers come up to me and say like, oh, why can't I use this coupon? Why? And I'm just like, oh, I'm sorry, honey boo boo, you can't use your coupon. Well, guess what? My dad died. So, you know, suck it. I didn't want to help anyone. I didn't want to be there. So what was the good of me being there if I was in such pain and such agony? But at the same time, I was like this for almost 2 months. You know, it took me a good 8 weeks for me to even be able to start to feel somewhat like things were getting better, which is what a lot of people told me would happen. They're like, you know, things will start to feel a little bit better around 8 weeks. And at the time of the funeral, I did not believe them. I was like, there is no way that life is going to get better after this. There's no way. But at the same time, all I wanted to do was, I wanted to tell my story to literally anybody who had ears. I was just like, oh my gosh, well, this is how my dad died. And, you know, at the same time, people wanted to listen to me because, well, they didn't want to listen to me. They listened to me just because they didn't want to be rude and say like, hey, I see that you need someone to talk to, but I can't hear the story again for like the 4th time. But honestly, that it got to a point where it was just kind of annoying, and so I feel like after a while, I kind of just stopped talking to people. But then things did start to get better after about 8 weeks. I got myself a little journal, and I titled it Letters to Dad. All I wanted to do was just talk to my dad. And every single time that Sweet Child of Mine came on the radio, I had to pull over. We danced to Sweet Child of Mine as our, like, you know, father-daughter dance at my wedding, and I'm finally now able to listen to it and sing along without wanting to bawl my eyes out and have to pull over on the side of the road because I can't see because my eyes are filled with tears. I don't have to do that so much anymore. But I pretty much avoided the radio for a good, like, 4 months after that. But things did start to get better. I started my journal, Letters to Dad, and I started spending more time with my family. I started spending a little bit less time with my friends, mostly just because they were all busy and I was busy too, but I wanted to spend more time with my family, really hold them tight. But losing my dad also taught me quite a few valuable lessons. It taught me having empathy for others who have lost others that they love. I always made the same types of things that everybody else would say, like, oh, let me know if you need anything. I'm so sorry for your loss. How are you? Oh my gosh, I hated that word. When you have somebody who's lost someone that they love, like whether it be like a parent, brother, sister, you know, husband, whatever, like someone that they love and they care about, do not ask them, how are you? Like, oh, well, my dad just dropped dead. How the do you think I am? Okay. I mean, granted, at the same time, people just kind of really wanted to know, like, you know, hey, how are you doing? How are you holding up? But it was kind of funny when I had my boss who, thankfully, you know, I'm so thankful for this. She came to the viewing to come see me and kind of to see how I was doing. She asked, like, you know, how are you? And I was like, do you want the truth or do you want to lie? And she was like, I want the truth. And I said, well, I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, and my hair is falling out. So I guess I'm not doing too great. So now, whenever I have somebody who has lost a loved one, instead of asking, how are you? Or let me know if you need anything, I'll message them or text them, call them, and be like, hey, what do you need right now? Do you need anything right now? What do you need today? Because having someone say like, oh, well, let me know if you need anything, if everybody says it, then it no longer has any meaning. You have to make sure that you mean it. So when you reach out to someone and say, let me know if you need anything, you should be reaching out to them on a daily basis and say, hey, what do you need today? And if you don't necessarily think that you'd be okay with that, then don't say it. Don't say, let me know if you need anything, if you're not willing to reach out to that person literally almost every single day and say, hey, what do you need today? If you can't make that kind of commitment to someone that has lost someone, don't even offer. And I don't mean that in like a depressing way and say like, well, don't say it like, oh, let me know if you need anything. I mean, when you tell someone who's grieving, let me know if you need anything, you have to mean it. And you should be meaning it on a daily basis. Because if you care enough about someone to do them a favor, you should be doing it almost willingly any day. And someone who's grieving is not just going to reach out to someone and ask you for help. I mean, or at least I didn't. My mom didn't. My brother didn't. So I don't know if anybody else's experience is different. However, that's what our experience was like. when I would tell somebody that my father passed away, instead of saying, oh, it's okay, when they would say like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, instead of saying it's okay, because it's not okay. I'm not okay. Well, I mean, I guess I'm okay now, but I was not okay. So I started to learn how to say thank you. You know, thank you so much. Like, you know, that means a lot to me. Thank you so much for your support. Because it did mean a lot to me that people were sorry about it, especially when they would express such empathy, or somebody that, you know, really did feel for me, and I appreciated it very much. So instead of saying it's okay, I now say thank you. Another thing that I learned is that it's okay to cry. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to tell someone, you know what, hey, I'm having a bad dad day. Like, can I go in the back and cry for 5 minutes? I just need to let it out. It's okay to let it out, and it's okay to be mad. I mean, as long as you're not like throwing stuff at people and not like cussing people out, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to feel the way you feel. You are grieving, and that's okay. To someone who doesn't know what you've been through, it's okay to tell them, you know, hey, I just recently, you know, lost my dad, or I just recently lost whoever. You know, I'm just not feeling at my best. I'm not myself. You know, I just lost someone. And they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, like their entire perspective of what you've been going through now changes, because now they are more focused on how you feel, and they're able to better empathize with you. So that's another thing that I learned. The day that my father passed away, Luke and I were actually on our way home from his aunt and uncle's house. We were actually on our way to his cousin's house to go take a look at a camper that he was willing to sell to us. I asked my dad if he would come take a look at the camper with us, just to make sure that everything looked good, and to just kind of give us any advice, because he had been a camper like his whole life, so he knew what to look for. We dropped him off at the house after we were done, and this is what really gets me, because when I was a teenager, we didn't get along. We were two very much alike. We both have to have the last word. I'm very just pig-headed, not pig-headed, but just very stubborn. We're both very stubborn people. And we just butted heads because that's the way it was. And so when I was a teenager, I always thought to myself, like, damn, I really should not be saying things like, well, screw you, like, I hate you, blah, 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 like, you know, because like typical teenagers do when they fight with their parents. I was always afraid that we would get into a fight, and that my last words to him would be something awful. I'm just really glad that my last words to him were, I love you too. So from now on, no matter what kind of fight you get into with someone, never leave them with something terrible. You should always be saying I love you too, especially if it's somebody that you do care about. I know that this video kind of seems like it's me just really rambling on and kind of just like telling my story, but if me rambling and telling my story is going to help someone who's been in the same position as me, another person who's lost their dad unexpectedly, if this gets to them and reaches them and touches them in any way and helps them in any way, shape, or form, then me crying on camera was worth it. My dad was somebody who cared about everyone. If you knew him, you knew that, you know, even though he was kind of an asshole sometimes and stubborn, he loved everyone. He didn't like having people not like him, just like me. I don't like being in arguments with somebody. I don't like feeling like someone doesn't like me. He was very much the same way. He cared about everyone. He was an airbag designer. He has, I think, 26 patents for airbag designs. And he loved to golf. He loved heavy metal. And most importantly, more than anything, you know, he loved his family. He loved my mother. He loved me. He loved my brother. And that's all that mattered. I wanted to thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that I won't have to do any more videos like this. But thank you so much for watching, and if you have someone that you love, tell them you love them in the best way you know how. Bye, y'all.